This one came through the email. It said, you've been talking about the industry more and more lately and about some of the larger stores closing. I think he means in reference to Sam Ash. Do you think that this is the end for mom and pop stores? You seem to be alluding that you believe this is the end of the mom and pop music stores. No. I've said this before, so this is a good question, good topic. Independent mom and pop music stores. Here's how I feel about this. I've said this before. I think they need to adapt to the new market. I think that means they have to do a little bit more internet. They have to be on social media. There's a ton of music stores that you guys are watching on social media that you love. Look, there's Anderton's, there's Flipside Music, there's Casino Guitars, there's a ton, and there's RNA Music. There's a ton of stores that have embraced social media, which and for lack of business, if I was going to, I treat you guys like I treat the inner circle of the people I talk to as well, which means I refer to it the way I refer to it them. They have embraced the free marketing that is available. That is what social media is for a business. It's free marketing. And if it's not free, it is damn near close. And I once said that, and then somebody said, Phil, I don't think you know what a camera means. And I responded to that, and I will always say this, and I meant no disrespect to them, but I needed them to really understand this. I said, hey, no disrespect, but I got 100,000 subscribers with a cell phone. So you don't need a camera in a studio. You need to be sincere, go out there and find people who are interested in what you're interested in. And so music stores are doing that. That's one way. The other way is that they can do things is they make their stores unique and interesting when you walk in. There was a time where well, not in my opinion, it was true. There was a time where brands made stores. You walked into a store, you knew it. They didn't have Fender, they didn't have Gibson, they weren't a real store. They didn't have Marshall, right? Not a real store. They had to have the brands. You walked in and you're like, oh, all the brands you never heard of. Now I think it's the opposite. Okay. I had this experience years ago with a bicycle shop. You go into a bicycle shop, and the first time I went into a nice bicycle shop, I hadn't been in years, I didn't recognize any of the brands of bicycles. And all the brands I knew, I was like, where's your Schwinn's? Where's that? And they're like, that's at Walmart. I'm like, what? And I think that's gone this way too. When I walk into Guitar Center, no, not picking on Guitar Center, just when I walk into Guitar Center, what I see is, in fact, I told you, I can close my eyes and tell you what I see. Okay, ready? On the first two rungs, you're going to see a crap ton of Epiphones. You're going to see 8 Squiers, and then you're going to see 2 Schecters. And then on the top 2 rings, you're going to see 3 Gibsons, and then you see it's the same thing. It's going to be a half a dozen made in Mexico Fenders. It's going to be a couple American Fenders. It's going to be, a couple EVH guitars. It's accounts. What I see is accounts when I walk in those stores, not guitars. So what I see is FMIC. FMIC means there's Gretsch's on the wall, there's Jackson's on the wall, there's EVH on the wall, there's Fender, there's Squier. That's what's on the wall. And then Fender amps. That's one account, okay? So it's one company giving you one credit line to Guitar Center. And then when I go, I see the next account, which is Gibson Epiphone. And that's one account. Gibson Epiphone's one account. Well, technically, okay, it can be 2 accounts. Just like Fender can be multiple accounts of those too. But once you get to the level where you get all those brands, you're going to get one account. When I walk into a mom and pop music store, that's the last stuff I want to see. I don't want to see any of the Guitar Center stuff. I've already seen that. So I want to see everything the Guitar Center doesn't want to carry anymore. I don't mean expensive stuff. It doesn't have to be expensive. It's interesting to walk into a mom and pop store and see a row of Reverends. It's interesting to walk into a mom and pop store and see a row of Super amps or a row of I'm trying to think, Guild guitars. I recently just saw a store where they had a bunch of Guild electric guitars and Reverend guitars, and I thought, this is cool. I don't usually get to put my hands on these. And those aren't cheap guitars by any means, but I'm not saying, they're not Sirs, they're not, Tom Andersons, they're not crazy stuff like that. And so you can be a boutique store, sure, but mostly you want to be interesting and definitely want to be used, as much used gear as possible, because no matter how much the used market has been dominated by Reverb and eBay, there is still an amazing part of touching unique gear that you can't touch anywhere else. Like if you pick up a used Strat, the question earlier we got about the made in Mexico Strat for $495. They're making a question because we're talking about the internet. If they were in a store and they picked it up, they would know. they would know this is the right guitar for this price. And they would know that if they left it and came back tomorrow, it could be gone, and they make that purchase. So I think that's a great way to see, a way for them to prosper. But the one thing I will tell you, what I remind mom and pop shops all the time, and maybe it's a bad analogy, but I like it because I think it's effective, which is this. In the world today, there is Amazon, but there is Etsy. And I understand Etsy is now as corporate as can be too, but just go to the heart of the analogy. There is Amazon, which is mostly mass-produced stuff, okay? Mostly catering to the discount. And then there's Etsy, and that's where you end up getting something strange and unique, right, is Etsy. And again, some of you guys get grumpy because that's what happens, and you go, well, Etsy's not what they were. I understand that, but you understand what I'm saying too. So there are two ways to be successful in the modern world. You can be unique, or you can be the cheapest thing out there. I think so the mom and pops, I think, are far from dead. I just think that the ones that don't understand their new role in the market are going to have trouble. And I think a lot of them do on all kinds of levels. And I wish I could give better advice. Some of them I think, deserve better advice, but I think at the very least, that's enough to help them get sorted out. So to answer your question is no, I don't think it's the end of the mom and pops. I think the mom and pops will be stronger as a whole. There's just going to be a lot less of them. That's just the reality. So, and they're going to have to work. So that started, by the way, way before the internet, having to work harder for customers, mom and pops. A lot of us are old enough to remember the difference in the mom and pops, versus, we praise mom and pops because it's nice to praise the underdog. But the reality is, when the Guitar Centers first came, the reason why they took off was not because their prices were cheaper. That was a big factor. And not because they had bigger variety, because that was a big factor too. Their main thing was they weren't douchebags. Like, when Guitar Center started out, they just weren't. You could go into Guitar Center and you could buy a guitar and you could get home and go, man, I didn't realize in the store, this thing just doesn't, it's just not right. And you go back to your mom and pop and they'd be like, all sales final, pound sand. And you'd be like, what? Can I exchange it? No, all sales final. We'll buy it back from you at a loss. That's how it worked. For those of you younger that are like, I don't know, Phil must have had a bad experience. That was more norm than you can ever imagine. It was extremely common in the industry, that all sales final. I once personally had a store who I'm friends with now, which is only even a little funnier, tell me, we are try it before you buy it store. So, I don't want to hear it. You had time to figure out if you liked it before you left. And that's how it worked. And Guitar Center came in with the, we're not even talking about the whole don't touch anything environments. We're talking about the whole, once you bought it, you were stuck with it. And, and like I said, and if you took it back, they would buy it at a huge, massive loss to you. Guitar Center injected a little bit of that into the industry. The whole, hey, we'll give you, 30 days to return this, which is crazy. The reason why this also connects to the current market is, that's why mom and pops have to adapt, because they had to adapt to that to have slightly better return policies. I'm not saying all mom and pops should have a 30-day return, no questions asked. That's almost impossible for most mom and pops. So the compromise that works a lot of times is in-store credit. It's like, hey, I can't give you your money back because I used it to pay payroll and the electric bill, but you can exchange it for a gift card and you can buy something else. And you're a guitar player, you'll find something else. And that's sometimes a reasonable ask for a smaller business. There's compromises there. But the big proponent now is, like I said, when you look at, Sweetwater and you look at online entities now with their customer service and how they have the money to put the muscle behind it, mom and pop's going to have to improve that service a little bit. And I use the high-end, there's high-end dealers, and I always tell you this. When I talk about Sweetwater, and we'll end on this note, when I talk about Sweetwater and they take pictures of the guitars and they weigh the guitars, that's really cool. But then you go to Wildwood Guitars, which is, they carry more high-end guitars as a whole. But if you look at Wildwood Guitars, they take actual pictures and they weigh the guitars. And they give you the thicknesses of the neck at the 12th and the 1st fret, which is nice. And you can call them and they will physically go get it for you. Sweetwater does this too, by the way. They'll go get, I don't know if you know this, if you call your Sweetwater rep and tell them, you want to know about the guitar, the rep will actually get the guitar shipped to their cubicle at Sweetwater and talk to you about it over the phone. Wildwood does that as well. And then Wildwood will give you a deal over the phone. I don't speak for them, but I'm just saying, if I was a betting man, I would bet that if you called Wildwood, you might get a deal. If you enjoyed this podcast clip, you can watch the entire episode by clicking the link in the description or streaming it on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. You can also join it live every week, Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I hope to see you there. Until next time, know your gear.